Hi, I'm Floor, and welcome to yet another video. Patch 3.5 is out now and has been out for a little while, and I want to make a video for my thoughts on the patch. Let's get into it. While patch 3.4's story was really good despite the laundry list of issues plaguing HSR's storytelling, patch 3.5 is not. The story is fascinating, don't get me wrong, but it is told in a very boring way. More than ever, you're barely touching your keyboard and doing things, and instead watching 20 to 30 minute cutscenes at a time. Okay, you do have dialogue options, but they feel like they're there just to get you to engage with the story somewhat. By the time you enter the new area in the patch, the sense of mental exhaustion from doing the story up to that point sets in, and your cursor is hovering that skip button. 3.4 was long but enjoyable, and only had arguably one part where it felt awful to get through, while 3.5 had multiple instances of this. What a massive step back. One instance of this is when you get to the Grove of Epiphany for the banquet with Ceridra's Chrysos army. This segment has some interesting lore dumps courtesy of Ceridra and Ligus' conversation, and the events that happen afterward, but this segment feels very drawn out, and it doesn't even help that the segment before then also feels drawn out. There's no battles to break up the slow pacing, and to make matters worse, when we get to Styxia to confront Ligus and find Hycealans, you get a deep dive into Hycealans' past, but the puzzles and the monologuing from Ligus turns this section into a slog, and you just want it to be over. There's also the cutscenes and flashbacks of the things that happened after Ligus sealed the Trailblazer away, before Evernight gave us a way out. How the Chrysos heirs banded together to do everything to defeat Ligus, while some, like Anaxa and Mighty, making sacrifices so permanent they may never come back. It really wants you to feel gutted, especially with some of the new animation techniques they used, but it drags on for too long. And you may not care by the time this section comes around. More than ever, the pacing of patch 3.5 needed to be broken up and have things like battles and mini-bosses to make it bearable. If that happened, 3.5 would still be littling, but it wouldn't have been so boring. Imagine playable segments where the Chrysos heirs are fighting Ligus and his forces, for example. Now, let's talk about the things we've learned from this patch, and we've learned a lot. I want to go over two things: Ceridra and the core flame of law, and Ligus and the truth of his identity. Let's start with Ceridra and the core flame of law. I find it extremely fascinating that the core flame of law has the rights to change the laws of the system, which, in retrospect, makes a lot of sense. But it is curious that Ceridra never used her powers as demigod to rewrite the scepter until this cycle. From what we understand about the core flame of law, Ceridra should have an understanding from the core flame that Amphorius is a simulation going through multiple extrapolations. And yet, she never did anything with that knowledge in the 33 million cycles that we're aware of. I suppose Ligus' knowledge and the Trailblazer were the factors needed for Ceridra to do so. Now, Ceridra herself isn't as interesting as I'd like her to be. Outside of her appearance, there's nothing that really makes her stand out among the Little Emperor characters in fictional media. If anything, I think she's too put together, and that makes her hard to relate to. She lacks the incompetence of Duke Dunon from Trails in the Sky, and lacks the fall from grace like Prince Zuko, and she doesn't go on a character journey like Damian Wayne. She feels too perfect, too clean, too safe. Now, let's talk about Ligus. Your mileage may vary with Ligus due to how poor this game's storytelling is, but I've always found him to be an interesting character since his introduction in patch 3.2. The problem with him has always been how he was connected to the outside world, and we finally have our answer. Ligus' true identity is that of Genius Society member number 1 and creator of Naus the Erudition, Xander 1 Kuwabara. This revelation was pretty crazy, and it's awesome that the writers always have hidden twists and surprises so deep into the story. In any other game with good storytelling, it would have been masterful, but in HSR, it can feel contrived, or yet another way to extend runtime through a more jaded lens. It doesn't help that in this patch, we have characters that have a habit of repeating themselves a lot. Anyway, back to Ligus. Ligus explains his goal through Plato's allegory of the cave, comparing not only the Amphorians to the people in the cave, but also the greater universe itself, as thanks to Naus, true unpredictability is impossible, as the Eon of Erudition will be able to predict and extrapolate any outcome. Xander 1 regrets his creation, and seeks to use the abandoned scepter and iron tomb to set the stage for the death of Erudition. His goal will have caused unprecedented chaos throughout the universe, but to Xander 1, it will be worth it, as true randomness can exist once more. To me, Xander 1's goal is misguided, too focused on the cynicism of Erudition, and it seems Herta and Scarlet have the same idea, and have brought Xander 1 to the negotiation table to convince him to turn away from this trajectory. Ligus is easily the highlight of this patch, so it's worth paying attention to for him alone. The patch ends with a hint of what's to come for our friends Dan Heng and March 7th, as it looks like Dan Heng has not returned to Express after all, and is still on Euphorius. And now that March has all of her memories and has returned as Evernight, we have something interesting to look forward to in patch 3.6. This story update was boring, yet fascinating. There's a lot of things to talk about, but I'll save it for the recap. I wanted to cover the most interesting parts to me now. Thanks for watching.